Welcome to part 3 of our series on the Tiz Jones story, featuring the Unshackled radio dramatization on the life of my grandfather, amateur boxing champion, convicted serial criminal, and, as of the end of part 2, newly converted evangelical Christian Tiz Jones, originally broadcast in September of 1953. If you haven't yet seen the previous segments of this series, you can click here to find the series playlist, if your YouTube viewer supports embedded links, or you can find the link in the video description. Loyal listeners of Unshackled who tuned in to hear the Tiz Jones story when it was first broadcast in 1953 were informed that the strongest part of that story was yet to come, although what had already been presented in that first broadcast followed the typical arc of a single Unshackled episode in which the main character recounts their hardships and personal or moral failings, and ultimately finds their salvation through an experience of religious conversion. What was to follow was so compelling and dramatic as to warrant a follow-up episode extending into a second week of broadcast on Unshackled. But because each episode of the program primarily focuses on the religious conversion experience of the main character, and this had already happened for Tiz Jones, the subject for that follow-up episode was a certain young man named Oshel Gardner Jr. But really it's more of the Tiz Jones story, for two reasons. One, Oshel Gardner Jr. was a convicted killer who met Tiz Jones in the Moundsville Penitentiary while on death row, awaiting execution for the murder of a cab driver the previous year. Tiz Jones then became the instrument of Mr. Gardner's religious conversion, and, in the parlance of the narrative, the salvation of his eternal soul. Secondly, Oshel Gardner Jr. was executed via electric chair in the spring of 1953, several months before the production and airing of this broadcast, so it was Tiz Jones himself who dictated to the show's producers the details of Mr. Gardner's final days, his dramatic religious conversion, and Tiz's own very significant role in it. Let's learn more about this compelling account of Oshel Gardner Jr.'s final days as the Tiz Jones story continues on Unshackled.
From Chicago, the crossroads of America, the Pacific Garden Mission presents Unshackled, the unique dramatic series using real names in true stories, brought to you by the famous old Pacific Garden Mission, the lighthouse which for 3/4 of a century has been offering the secret of a new life to the men and women of Chicago's Skid Row, but which now, through the medium of this broadcast, reaches up and out of Skid Row toward those who walk the avenues and boulevards of our world. Yes, Unshackled, the program you support, is reaching now into many parts of our trouble-tattered world and is changing lives wherever it's heard. If you heard Unshackled last week, you're not only acquainted with Tiz Jones, you're no doubt still marveling at the almost unbelievable transformation which took place in his life when at last this big, handsome, burly, tough guy, university-educated, state boxing champion in 4 divisions, hard drinker, then gambler, then criminal, then convict, at last humbled himself before Jesus Christ. His wife, who had divorced him, married him again because Tiz became the big, good-natured, smiling, happy fellow we all met last week, gentle as a lamb. But his very presence acts of power his big flying fists never held in the ring. Jesus Christ lives in Tiz Jones now, and it's literally made all the difference in the world. Tiz, this all happened after you were released from West Virginia State Penitentiary in 1950. Probably still hard for you to believe, isn't it?
Well, Jack, there's no feeling in the world like coming out of a sound sleep these days and realizing that I'm where I am now and not where I was.
That you're whose you are now and not whose you were. That does it, too.
Yeah. You know, don't you, boy?
I certainly do.
Oh, bless your hearts out there. As long as I belonged to Tiz Jones, I was a mess. But the minute I let the boy go and he began to belong to Jesus Christ, Tiz Jones was a miracle.
Tiz slipped once, but the Lord said, "Return unto me, and I will return unto you." Tiz returned. To stay, because he came back believing this time without waiting for a feeling at all. He no longer gauges things on how he feels. He measures everything by the fact of Jesus Christ. And in the third year of Tiz's life by miracle, God gave Tiz a job that had already made lifelong Christians tremble. For several months, quietly and without fanfare, Tiz Jones had been driving from his home in Charleston, West Virginia, to the state penitentiary at Moundsville every Sunday to talk with the boys, some of whom had been inmates with Tiz just 3 short years before. We quote Warden Skeen himself, who declares,
Tiz Jones has special permission not granted to ex-convicts. He can come here whenever he likes now, because he represents a complete metamorphosis. The men, and we have some 1,800 prisoners, turn out full force when Tiz comes to hold a meeting. They love him. He speaks their language. I give him a free hand here. He can go and come as he likes. He's doing a world of good.
And so, in the winter of '53, when the newspapers in the Charleston area suddenly had their front pages splashed with the story of an allegedly cold-blooded murder of a Point Pleasant taxi driver by a blond, curly-haired boy of 24 named Oshel Gardner Jr., it's no wonder Tiz Jones was called on the scene. There was a quick trial. An embittered, confused, resentful young Gardner was sentenced to the electric chair. The lad faced death. And he hated everyone. Especially did he resent the ministers and priests and the other spiritual advisors who came and read to him from the Bible and tried to talk to him about God.
Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth in me has everlasting life. I am that bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which cometh down
Guard,
from
come and
heaven.
get this guy out of here.
All right, Gardner. I'll go.
And take this thing with you.
That's yours. The men of Schwam Memorial.
Yeah, I know. The comfortable men of Schwam Memorial Presbyterian Church of Charleston presented it to me. Will you take it? I present it to you. With love.
On Easter Sunday, 1953, Tiz Jones was at the state prison early. And at the direct request of Warden Skeen, Tiz headed for death row to see Oshel Gardner.
That's him. Go ahead, Tiz.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Oshel. Hi. My name is Tiz Jones. I spent time here a few years ago. Oh, yeah. I've heard of you. You got religion. I've got a new life. And I want to help you get one, too. Beat it. Anything particular you'd like to talk about? Just beat it. Are you really guilty, Gardner? I'm going to the chair, haven't you heard? Yeah, I heard. Were you drunk, Oshel? Crazy talk. Had been for days. I don't want to talk about it. Okay. Except for one thing. Yeah? Yeah. All I want to say for publication anywhere is this. I'd die happy if I could have the whole state of West Virginia right on my lap in that chair. Oh, sure. You don't need to die. I don't have a chance now. Look, what I mean is, you just happen to know how you're going to leave this earth. But I'm going too someday. The way we go is not what matters. What matters is what happens the minute we're gone. Where do we go then? Jesus said, "He that believeth on me hath everlasting life." Now think about that, boy. They can't take that away from you. And only Jesus Christ can give it to you. He that believeth on me hath everlasting life. Did you get it?
Beat it.
Okay, but look. I've got special permission to stay right here with you for the remaining 3 days. Oshel, if you let me, I'll move right in the cell with you.
Are you crazy?
You need a father, Oshel. 3 days from now, you can go right to the Father if your faith is in Jesus. Jesus said, no man cometh unto the Father but by me. Did you get that? No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. If you want me to move in with you, just call for me. From now on out, I'm here just for you. So long. I'll be back this afternoon. Hi, Gardner.
Hi, Tiz.
Did you know this is Easter Sunday afternoon?
So what?
Does Easter mean anything to you?
No, not a thing. My new bonnet didn't arrive.
You know, if Jesus hadn't come out of that tomb, he wouldn't have a thing to offer us now. As it is, what happened to him that first Easter morning 2,000 years ago can happen to you right now.
Would you really move in here with me?
Try me and see.
No, I've been swamped with preachers and Bible verses.
I see you've got your own Bible.
Yeah, some guys who don't know what the inside of a jail looks like sent it to me from Charleston. What good's a book now?
Well, the Bible can't help you itself, I agree.
You do?
The one it's written about can, though. He can save you forever.
Would you really move in here and talk to me for 3 days, Tiz?
If you let me, Oshel.
You don't read much out of your Bible like the other guys did. You just say it off, don't you?
I read it, too. I love it.
You must be nuts. You used to box, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. But I'm not punchy. I'm sane, man, for the first time in 37 years. I've found out that God is a God of His Word, too. And I'll stay sane and happy just as long as I take Him at His Word. And Oshel, He says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. It's a gift, boy. All we can do is just empty up our hands and take it. Come unto me, and I will give you rest. You look tired, kid.
I'll get the guard to call you if I want to see you again. Beat it, will you?
Morning, Oshel.
Hi.
I kind of thought you'd call me last night.
You thought wrong, I guess.
I'm still your huckleberry today, boy. Want a roommate?
You're going to feed me that line again.
Don't you believe I'll move in the cell with you, Oshel?
You going to stick around for the next couple of days?
I said I was, didn't I? You done any more thinking?
That's all I've been doing.
You didn't sleep, did you?
No. I tried to read that thing.
The Bible? How'd you like it?
Sounds like Greek, except when you say it.
It's because I've tried it. I don't believe things are true just because they're in the Bible, Oshel.
No?
Nope. I know they're in the Bible because they're true.
Yeah?
And Jesus said, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. I am that bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. Jesus gave his own life for your sins, son. He's waiting to forgive you right now and give you an eternal life with him. You can go out of this old earthly life sure of the whole thing, Oshel, if you want to.
No. Tiz, there's only one thing that could make me really die happy. If somehow the whole state could be sitting on my lap when they turn on the juice in that rocking chair.
At this point of our story, regular listeners of Unshackled would likely have found themselves in what seems like familiar territory, with a carefully scripted 2-act dramatization performed by seasoned voice actors detailing the life story of the main character, and with a particular focus on their personal challenges and moral failings that, by the end of the first act, finds them at their lowest point of spiritual desperation. A more considered assessment of this episode, however, might reveal some notable distinctions when compared to other such stories featured each week in an Unshackled broadcast. For example, this episode, number 158 in the Unshackled catalog, is entitled The Oshel Gardner Story, and yet we learn next to nothing about the life story of Mr. Gardner himself, other than the fact that he spends his last days awaiting execution for the cold-blooded murder of a cab driver, and that he is hostile to the idea of being preached at by chaplains from local church communities. But as with the previous week's episode, the details of Oshel Gardner Jr.'s story were brought to the producers of Unshackled by Tiz Jones. And, of course, we have seen that Tiz Jones seems most accommodating when talking about Tiz Jones, even so far as to dramatically refer to himself early in this segment as a miracle. What little we do learn of Oshel Gardner Jr. is only of his final hours in the Moundsville Penitentiary, when this soul-saving miracle, Tiz Jones, first entered into Oshel's death row cell, coincidentally on Easter Sunday, a miracle only made possible through dubious misremembering of calendar dates for April of 1953. A dramatic embellishment for the sake of the Unshackled audience, perhaps, even if not necessarily accurate. But even in regard to Tiz Jones, one might find through this broadcast some questions that seek to be answered, such as, what transpired in the couple of years between the events of the previous episode when Tiz Jones, after serving his own prison sentence and was converted to evangelical Christianity, to the time period of this episode, during which Tiz, the miraculously transformed ex-convict, is so exceptionally regarded by the prison warden as to be given a seemingly unrestricted run of the place. And what was meant by the program's host and director when he mentioned at the start of the segment that, and I quote, "Tiz slipped once, but came back believing this time," leaving an astute listener to wonder why the divine might of revelatory salvation so emphasized in the Tiz Jones story didn't quite stick the first time, and to an extent invalidating the impact of the dramatic conversion story broadcast just 1 week earlier. Hints of things to come, perhaps? Questions to be considered for our upcoming final segment. For now, we're left only to wonder, is Oshel Gardner truly beyond redemption? Or can the miracle of Tiz Jones bring salvation into his hard and bitter heart before the clock runs out? Be sure to watch part 4 of this series for the gripping conclusion of the Tiz Jones story. Until then, thank you for watching. See you soon.